All right. Um, Here we are with episode 3 of my Workshop in Progress series. Starting a minute late, I had a phone call that went a little long, but today I am on my third hour block of time to create my presentation for the upcoming Macstock. So Macstock is a conference for Mac and Apple users. It is outside of Chicago, and I am flying out in 3 days. The conference starts in 3 days. I'm flying the morning of the conference, so I got to get these final elements taken care of with my presentation. In the first session, I went through and kind of planned out the structure of the presentation, and then in the second week, the second presentation or session, I went through and made the automations and the stuff that I'll be sharing. Not the slides, but the things that people are going to leave with, my handouts, my takeaways, my artifacts of the event. And at the end of the last live stream, I was puzzled. I ran into an issue and couldn't solve it on air. And I was at the end of my time that I had allotted for the live stream, so I turned it off. I canceled, or not canceled, I finished the presentation there, and with the promise, though, that I was going to figure it out and I was going to come back and I was going to start this live stream with the answer. So let me share the answer with you, and then I'll go ahead and give you get you caught up on everything else, and we'll make progress today. So here we are. Let me switch to my Mac. There we go. And here I am in drafts. And the thing we created last week, one of the elements we created, was this mock task paper template to share at the presentation. I'm going to have it on my website. We're going to people will be able to download this and get started with this task paper template. And this is specially formatted to work in conjunction with Keyboard Maestro and this action right here called Things Parser, which I did not create. It is on the drafts action library, and it is awesome. I use this all the time. But when I was running it, when I was trying to get it to run, I was getting an error message. And what you might not know if you're haven't done a lot of troubleshooting in drafts before is if you go to the action group, this little drop down here, and go to action log, you'll get this breakdown of what went wrong. There's my canceled sessions. These are the ones that went wrong. And then when it goes right, I can see that this step completed. So this was super helpful in diagnosing what was wrong with this format, with this paper, task paper format. And this is just the example one. This is the thing we'll be sharing. So it has a bunch of things in here that are going to be filled in by Keyboard Maestro. But the error, which is so hard to see, is right here. And this is why I was looking through and I was looking at my Keyboard Maestro macro and saying, "Oh, this stuff is this is how it's supposed to be. This all should work fine." But what you might not be able to see there is that is a squiggly bracket. That's the curly bracket, and it should be a open parentheses. So that little incorrect character broke the whole thing. It wouldn't create the project as it was supposed to in things because that character was wrong. That was my mistake, my fault for typing in the wrong thing as I was going in and creating this. I don't know how I did a totally different character, but I did, and that's why it's not working correctly. Why it wasn't working correctly, but now it does. So, quick rundown on what we are looking at here. So here's my demo. Sorry, let me switch to my Keyboard Maestro. Why aren't you focusing on Keyboard Maestro? There we go. Looking at Keyboard Maestro, here's the macro that we're going to be sharing. This is what we built last time. So this is going to prompt people for the name of their conference. And obviously, I'm going to suggest they type in Macstock here, and then you could pick your flight date for when that conference is going to be, when you're going to fly out. So Keyboard Maestro takes these two answers, turns them into variables, and then we can actually delete this because I like to have my projects be title case, and this is a leftover from when I duplicated the previous action, so I can delete that. And then last time what we also did was used Claude and a script I already had to update and create this shell script. So this is where people can, this shell script will create a folder structure on the person's computer, as well as some markdown documents on their computer in the location they designate using the Keyboard Maestro variable. That's going to be right here. And it's going to create, again, the folder structure with each day of the conference and all that stuff. The idea is that I'm sharing this, I'm giving this to people, so not so that they can use this exact thing to solve their problem, or download and run and then be done. I'm giving them a fleshed out example that has lots of different elements and components in a way that might spark them to see, like, oh, that'd be great if I had this, but it looked like this markdown file instead of this markdown file. And it's cool that we can do nested folders, but I want my folders to be named like this. That's what I'm trying to share with people. And by having this documentation up here, the same way I created it, this is really great to be able to take this and give it to Claude and say, help me make these updates. I think the term is vibe coder. I'm 100% on board with that. And it's I have found AI tools. That's my number one use for AI tools, is like these little shell scripts and stuff like that. I got a comment in here from Mohammed. So Mohammed, Macstock is a conference in outside of Chicago for Mac users. I can't tell you too much about it because I've actually never been. I saw that they were looking for presenters, and I've been looking to do an in-person presentation. Haven't done one in a while, so I popped on there and submitted a talk, and that's what I'm doing here. Is I'm building my talk for the conference that's this Friday. So hopefully that was a little bit helpful. And I'm sorry I don't have a lot of information for you, but it is a 3-day conference. It does focus on Mac users, and it's outside of Chicago. And I think the town is called Crystal Lake, Illinois. This is the 9th year they've done it. I've heard about it before. I think in listening to podcasts and stuff, I've heard people mention it. But hopefully I'll be able to tell you more about it in the future. But thanks for clicking in and watching. The other reason I'm doing this is not only for accountability, to make sure that I make my presentation, because I am giving a workshop presentation. My day job is also as a technical trainer, so I'm doing this unedited live series of me making how I make presentations or how I make learning content just kind of wanted to be able to share the stuff that's usually happens secretly in a back room somewhere as a teacher's making their presentations or as a trainer's making their stuff. You don't get to see what they actually how they do it. They just come out and give their presentation or give their lesson. So I wanted to create that content here. So we're kind of doing two things. Sharing my learning design process and also trying to make something to give a presentation this weekend. So so that's this. So this shell script again is made by Claude for me to use. I'm sharing it with everybody there, and then with the information from this conference info, it will make the presentation. It'll make the folders and the markdown documents, and then it's going to copy. It's going to pull up the template that I just shared. Sorry, my screen sharing isn't jumping from app to app like I expected. So it's going to pull this template, and then it's going to look for the variables, and then it's going to add those variables in, and then make a project in things. So see if it'll share better now. There you go. Okay. So this pulls the template and it copies it to a named clipboard in Keyboard Maestro, and then it makes a new draft with that template, and it fills in the blanks, and it uses the things parser to make the project. So this is kind of like the 90-minute workshop is going to be me showing people how to think about a project. It doesn't have to be coming to this conference. This is the backup idea that I'm going to have so people can have something. If they have like just a total brain block and can't come up with their own project, they'll be able to download this and follow along. But what I'm hoping is that during the conference and during the workshop that I'll be giving, people will come with their own ideas, their own things that they have to do. Like for me, at my job, it would be like making training videos or writing documentation or things like that. Standard projects that I do all the time. By having an automation like this that sets up all of my files and folders and the project, like getting all that digital infrastructure basically automatically in place, I have found it to be incredibly helpful over the past 4 years as a trainer this is my current job, and the 10 years I was a classroom teacher before that. I found so many opportunities to automate standard things, and it saved me a bunch of time and improved my ability to do the stuff I want to do. So I'm hoping to share and to get people thinking about that for themselves, whether they do digital content creation like I do, or whether they do reports at work, or whatever they end up doing. The idea is that they can download the stuff that I'm going to share, and then they can edit with me, and we can go through it together, and it's part of the workshop, and they can build this automation. I call them automation chains. So this like series of automations and steps. They can adapt this to their use case. But what I'm sharing here, this things parser, this multi-step Keyboard Maestro, is what I think. I think this is a helpful thing to have, is for anybody to have. At least think about this conference that you're at right now, and think about attending next year as the project that you could work on. So we give people something to work with. What I just noticed, though, too, as I was reading through this, and that's the other thing I wanted to do today, is just to, with fresh eyes, because I haven't looked at this since like the last live stream, which was a week ago. I realized that my template over here doesn't use, it has built into it Macstock as the name of the project, but it doesn't use that variable that we declared, which is conference name. So Keyboard Maestro looks for that conference name to have parentheses around it. So that should go in there. But I am also hard coding into here, register for Macstock. Does it make more sense just to have it in there? I do like that there would be, I like having two different variables in here, one of them being a number and another being a name. And I am kind of saying, I'm calling it, I'm mixing, I've mixed things up here as I was making it. So let's refine that. So yeah, Macstock macro, I think I'm just going to call it that. I think I'm just going to make it a touch simpler for everybody. So conference info, the title, dates of conference. We could do conference name. We'll take that out. We'll add another variable for, so we'll call this flight date out. Flight date back. So I gotta find, so I need to update my my template here. So this should be flight date out. Call this flight date back. And let's add home. We'll say unpack. All right, so now we've updated this. So we do still have two variables, flight date out and flight date back. They'll put that information in, and that should get populated as it needs to. Then looking in here, I can see from my documentation, it is looking for that title case variable, which I took out. I think if we just switched that out for Macstock, it should work. But let me double check that with my good buddy Claude. All right. Can you update this script to remove the Keyboard Maestro TCT title variable and hard code the conference name as Macstock? All right. Updated the version number, updated the date, updated the documentation. Excellent. All right. So then now we're pulling the same we're pulling the same draft, creating a copy, and updating everything. All right, so let's run this real quick. We'll see how this goes because it's going to jump through a couple different programs, but I'm going to go ahead and run this macro, and we're going to test it to make sure that the Macstock conference macro works. And this should be the final version that we're going to end up sharing. So let's check. So here's my prompt. The flight date out, and I should update that conference, that prompt up there. What conference are you going to? We're going to Macstock, so I should change that. But let's go ahead and say today is 2507. Friday is the 11th. Oops. And so that's Friday. Saturday is the 12th. 13th, so 2025-07-13. So I'm flying out. I'm flying to the conference on Friday and coming back on Sunday. Those are the dates. Okay. So there it goes, duplicating the template with the new dates, if you see those dates. And then here is the project. Oops. Not sure why that's all zoomed out real weird, but so here's the Macstock conference. So it is on here for today because if we look over here, the when date is 1 week before the flight date out, and the flight date out is in 3 days. So this gets added to today, and the deadline is this Friday. I didn't have a date here for the presentation, but there's or for registering for Macstock, but there's the link to Macstock. Forwarding the information to Flighty by Friday. That was my when date. I have to do it by then. Packing the plane bag by Friday. All those dates show up. And then here's the home thing we added. So unpack on Sunday, which is the flight date back. So that's great. And then updating my flight prep checklist with a link to the draft, which if you click that, takes us back over here so that the person could update it in the future. So that's a key thing that I have in all of my project checklists is a link back to the template so I can update it. And by doing this having this reminder be the day you come back, this is the day after you come back, like you're settled in and it's still fresh in your mind and you can do it and update your checklist then. If you notice, I do have the area home up here, but coming to today, you can see that it's not in the home area. It's not tucked under home because I use an emoji for mine. So that's an important note, is that it won't create an area and it won't create a tag if it doesn't exist. So if you notice this forward flight information to Flighty, which is the app that I use, it doesn't have any tags on it. But I did have tags over here, and that's because this will not create tags or will not create locations that don't exist. So that's something I do need to probably make a note of. Let's add that up here. Let's say this will not create areas or tags in things that do not already exist. There we go. All right. But it worked this time. The dates work, my headings work, the variables work, so we're in a good spot. I'm going to go ahead and delete that since I don't need that anymore. And I wanted to update this prompt, dates of the conference. When is Macstock this year? There we go. All right. So, before we go and create anything else, let's do a quick review of the mind map. So, this is the, there we go. This is the mind map that I made, which you're not going to be able to read right now. I zoomed out, but this is the mind map that I made in the very first session. If you want to watch me go through all that, the first episode of the Macstock series has that information. But let me go ahead and zoom into 100%. So on the left, what I identified was the stuff that I'm going to create that people should be able to download from my website during the presentation. So this is the shell script template that makes these files and folders over here, and then I also want to share the drafts project template, which is what we just made, and the macro that, the Keyboard Maestro macro that we just ran that just worked. So I've completed the creation of all these things. I still have to make that page on my site, which is probably going to be the second half of the session today. Make this page on my site so that people can easily download and access this stuff during the presentation. But let me just come over to the other side, which is the actual structure of the talk, and make sure that this makes sense. Now that I've created everything and done it, like my initial thought, mind mapping all this stuff out is one thing, which is good to have a plan, but now coming back into it after having made the stuff and thought about it and worked with the presentation idea, I want to come back and make sure that this flow makes sense, and I want to do that before I make anything in the presentation, because if this is the only session you've watched of me doing this so far, you know, I have a talk that I'm giving this Sunday, so 3 days to fly until I fly out, and 2 more days after that. So 5 days from now, I'm giving a 90-minute talk at a conference. I haven't made slides yet, and there's no visual to go with this presentation just now, and I'm not worried about that. I'm not saying that in a stressful, like, oh my gosh, I'm saying that because kind of by design, I don't make the presentation file, I don't make the visual until the very end. And that's what I tried to tell my students when I was a classroom teacher, and presentations were a really big thing in my classroom. You know, I would always see assign a presentation. I'd say, hey, we're doing this. You have to present about a disease. In 2 weeks, you're going to have to tell me about something about the human body, because I taught anatomy and physiology. Pretty much without fail, at least at the beginning of the year, students would as they're like receiving the paper with the rubrics and stuff like that, as they're getting the assignment, they're also opening their presentation software and they're starting to design slides. And it's like, well, you don't even know what you're doing. Why? So anyway, I believe in it is wise to make your slides at the end once you've done all the other hard work of the presentation, because I think all this stuff's much more important than the visuals that you make, and it's much easier to make the visuals once you've thought about all this stuff. Anyway, let's take a look at this. So I love mind maps, and this is a tool called Mind Node, and starting at the top and working my way down, these are the different sections of the presentation. So the prep. So what I'm going to have up on the screen when people walk in, that's what this is. So there'll be a link. I'll have a QR code, and I'll make a short, I'll make the easiest URL I can to the page that I'm going to make on my site that has all that information we just looked at on the left side. That'll be up there, and I'll be encouraging people to access that ahead of time. And then I'm also going to tell people that these are the tools that we're going to be using today. So pretty sure I have icons for all of these things. So, I'll make a welcome slide as people walk in for the presentation. So that's the prep part. And then this intro, which I've initially identified as 10 minutes, this is where what I talked about before, I'm going to convince people that this is a good idea. I'm going to propose this idea, and I'm going to get people to pick a task. So I'm going to suggest they think through the things they do at work and the things they do at home for any type of project that would benefit from a regular, repeatable project digital infrastructure. These files and folders and task management type stuff. Do you have, and get people to think about that. So this 10 minutes is going to be like a lot of prompting here at the beginning, a lot of reflecting. And then this attending Macstock, which is the example that I've made, this is the backup. Again, this is what I'm like, if people don't come up with anything else, but they're here at at my talk and they need something to do for the next 75 minutes or so, I'm going to say like, well, you're going to plan on attending Macstock next year. And that's everything we've built. And then I'm going to suggest they use a mind map. I got to double check to make sure MindNode has a free trial. If so, I need to collect a link for that. Look. So that's something I need to do, and that's something I'd like to have on my site, right? So I'm going to tell people, this is the tool I use, and I even have a blog post about mind mapping. I'll link to that, but I'll say, like, download this MindNode and try a free trial. I might have to look for another tool that also does mind mapping. I've used others in the past, so I'll provide a couple examples there. But I'm going to then try to get them in this 10 minutes with this prompting and all that stuff to think through and try to mind map all the stuff they might need for their automation. Like, what are the folders they need? What are the stuff they need to create? All that. So this idea of this 10-minute intro is like a sales pitch for me, but also people are participating and they're starting to think about their own stuff. I feel good so far. That all makes sense. That all stands. Nothing's changed. So then the macro assembly. So this is where I'm going to have people visit the site. They're going to download the macro, Keyboard Maestro. You know what? So link to the site in the prep is going to have links for trials of apps. All right. And that's going to connect to all those things there. So then I'm going to give them some time to think about their task. So they're going to copy the template that I had on the site. They're going to copy that into drafts, and they're going to make it their own. They're going to use their mind map that they made and remake their sections or rethink about stuff like that. So something to think about here So I used to use OmniFocus. My life became less complicated, so I needed a less complicated task management tool, and I really like Things. So I'm running all of this off of Things, but the audience that's going to be there are going to be probably a lot of people who like OmniFocus. So I need to think about maybe trying to make I wonder if it's too complicated to tell people to build it into the presentation. Maybe I can do it a link on the site. That's a note for me to think about. So anyway, they'll personalize their template, and then there's 2 actions to install. I'll link to those on the site that they can install quickly. I realize in this circumstance, they don't actually need the mustache prompt for drafts because we're making it in Keyboard Maestro. I only use the thing parser in this circumstance. I use mustache prompt in other circumstances. When I'm doing like a pared down version of this, like when my son has to attend a birthday party of a friend, I have a mustache prompt. I use mustache prompt and things parser to do this, just on my phone because it's a simpler project that doesn't need lots of other stuff. But I don't need that for this. I'll delete that. And then here, when I'm testing actions, so we're going to test to make sure that their project template works just in drafts. From drafts to things, we're going to make sure that that creates what they needed to create. And this is what I think is going to take longer. So if I had said tasks are probably going to be easier because I think people think more about their tasks. I think people come in with more experience thinking about projects. That maybe this is just me, but I'm going to imagine that's easier for people to think of. And then a little bit of a harder concept is going to be thinking about the folders that you need and planning out the folders that you need. That's definitely a mind map. We're going to reuse a tool that we introduced before, and I'm going to tell them to make a mind map of the folders that you need, and then think about the different types of markdown files that you might want to have created, and especially if you're an Obsidian user, you can do that. And I bet a lot of people who are going to be here are Obsidian users. I'm a new Obsidian user, so but I do have some things I can share about that. And then they're going to get the shell script that I created, and then they're going to update the folders and the files that get created. And this is where I'm going to suggest use an LLM to do that. There might be people here who are, I know there are people here who are way better at shell scripts than me. Doesn't take much because I appreciate them, but I don't write them myself. I have Claude write them for me. And then they should test that. So we're going to plan all this out. So we're going to give them some time because the LLM integration probably might take a minute. And then test the shell scripts. And then QA, this is what I'm saying, not Q&A, this is the quality testing. We're going to make sure that this all works. We're going to give people some time to put it all into a Keyboard Maestro macro and have it all working all by themselves. And we're going to give some time to iterate on that process if it's not working. And then the outro will be, telling them to make more of their own, think about other things, share what they make, and then I'll ask them to subscribe to my channel and my blog. They talk about it as the organizer of the conference suggests, like, saving some time to give some kind of a pitch to have people buy your book or subscribe to your podcast or whatever. I don't have any of that stuff, so I'm just going to tell people to subscribe to the YouTube channel and the blog, and that's my pitch. I was thinking about using this as a way to kick off like some type of coaching, like where I could do like virtual sessions and help people set these things up themselves. I like that idea. I'll put a question mark. I'll think more about that if I want to end up making something on the site. I might just make like an interest form. Doesn't have to be more than that. So, I think I feel comfortable with this. I know this like 30-minute session and 20 minutes on task and 30 minutes on notes, that seems like a lot of time. I don't know quite how many people are going to be at the conference or be at the talk. So if it's just like a one-on-one thing, or if there's like 6 people in the room, then maybe I don't need as much time here. But as you're just building in some buffer for these type of learning experiences always make more sense. And I'll have in my back pocket, I'll be able to like extend into like the Obsidian stuff maybe, because I do have some other cool automations that are connected to Obsidian that definitely go along with this. But I feel like all this makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to come over here into my website. So I use WordPress, and I'm going to make a page on my site that I've been talking about this whole time is what I'll use to hand out stuff. And what I'm trying to decide right now is if I want to use my theme has an advanced layout builder, which gives you all kinds of control and extra features. Do I need to build the site with that, or just, I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to name the page first. Macstock 2025. And for right now, I'm just going to call it Macstock to make the URL as short as possible. So heading, we'll call it welcome. So I'm not going to make you watch me find links to all that stuff, but that'll be my prep up here, and I'll write a little bit of text here to get people to like tell people what's going on here, and then let's make that so it's H2. We'll say intro. This will be macro assembly. Tasks. Folders. And I don't need a section on QA. See you next time. So that'll be my outro section. All right, so for the macro assembly, I need to come to Keyboard Maestro, and Keyboard Maestro allows you to export a macro So I'm going to export this to the desktop, and it is called Macstock macro. Okay. Download the sample macro. We'll go in that section. The folders have a plugin here for sharing code. Let me go back to Keyboard Maestro. Now, it is in here. It's in the macro, but I'll share it here in this as well to make it easier. What is this? Do I not have a shell script option here? Oh. Yeah, it's bash, so that works. And the tasks, I'm going to use that too. This, and that language can be, what do we have? Markdown. It's not Markdown, it's task paper, but Markdown's close enough. Okay. So what this ends up, what I'll be able to do here, and the reason I want to have this page on my site is I'll be able to, we're just going to walk our way down this page. And I can reference it as we're presenting, and people can download stuff from there. It'll be useful to have readily accessible. So again, this isn't, I'm not done building the page yet, but yeah, we'll walk through this, and I'll be talking, and I'll say that, and might even include it in my visuals. I don't know yet, but people will be able to link to and download the macro, and then here is the task paper template that people could then copy easily. There's the shell script that people can copy easily, and then scrolling, and then I'll put down in here, if I end up deciding to do the coaching thing or whatever, I'll be able to link down here to that too. It's a long, I mean, it's a long script, but I think that's good to have there. And then, again, I'll flesh this out with all the links, and I'll link to other posts on my site that people can access. All right, so let's go back and look at our presentation here. What else needs to be on the site? So the folders have the shell script. So that's what we just looked at here. Folders, okay. Tasks has the project template, and we'll need to add the links, but there's the project template. So for the intro section, sorry, looking back at this. I don't have, I think I'll I'll put the link into my node there, and I'll put some of the prompts in here too. Kind of a written description. All right, so for now, there's more work to do, and I gotta do a lot of searching and links and stuff like that, work on the spacing of this, but that takes us to almost an hour. So at this point, I feel really good about the order of events. I feel good about the presentation structure. I definitely have a buffer built in that I can use, but I have in the back of my mind some stuff that I can pull out if everything's moving too quickly, if everybody's just so good at this and it works really fast. I'd rather not be stressed about cutting off stuff, right? I don't want to try to fit too much stuff into that 90 minutes. I'd rather definitely get all the stuff done and then be able to extend certain sections if time allows. So that's part of that that teacher mentality of like I'm gonna have in my mind like a pace, and I'll be keeping track of the time, and if we're not at, if things are moving too fast, I'll be able to slow things down by talking more about certain topics or getting people to think more about certain topics. And but I think this timeline works. I like the idea. I require the idea. I don't know. I'm definitely going to have the site. The site's going to work. The site's going to be really helpful. I'm going to build that all out so it's a useful resource. And then it's also not only just to help me through the presentation, but it's also like basically taking notes for the person who's attending already. Here's everything that I want you to know. So this is like a good handout. And then I guess promotionally, it's nice to have people on the site so that people can like bookmark, and there's things on the side with like subscribing to YouTube and all that stuff is all there too, which, is just a bonus, I guess. But I like owning the thing people are visiting, and I like having control over the thing and knowing that it's always going to be there, right? I always have that access to it. So, and my automation works, and I think my plan of having this attending Macstock as like the backup solution makes sense. So honestly, I'm feeling really good. I'll spend some time later today probably fleshing out the rest of this page and making sure that it has all the links. I'll start the next live stream going through the final version of that page. And then my last live stream will be me making the actual presentation. And that's going to be interesting because I would almost always reach for, in this circumstance, I would reach for Google Slides. It's what I used as a classroom teacher all the time, and I like it's just the right amount of what I want from a presentation software. And I like being able to share it and like all that kind of stuff. I like how it works. But the conference presenters shared last weekend that they suggest not using that because of the internet reliability at the site. So I am using a website to run my presentation, so that's going to be a little bit of an issue. But they also want a downloaded copy so that they can have backups too. So I think I'm going to use Keynote for the first time since like 2009. I think I'm going to use Keynote for this presentation. That feels appropriate for a Mac-based conference. For me to give a talk, I should use Keynote. But like I said, I haven't used it since you got it on a physical disc. You paid for it on a physical disc at the store. So I'll be stumbling through making a presentation in Keynote, at least for a little while. Who knows? I might not have the patience for it, but thanks for watching. This is the third hour of building this presentation. I probably have about, I don't know, another 30-45 minutes to work on this page that I just showed you the initial starting of, and then hopefully I'll be able to build the rest of the presentation and review everything in an hour. Next time, probably tomorrow, we'll see. Subscribe to the channel to get notified about that new video. You could also check the description for a link to the playlist where the first 2 videos already exist. This one will be added, and that 4th one will be there too. I'm also kicking around the idea of maybe trying to record the presentation that I actually give to be able to put it as like the final piece on that video, but I'm going to this conference by myself and I don't really know anybody there, so the logistics of recording all of that stuff might be more than I want to invest in this for a solo 2.5-day conference that I'm attending for the first time. So I probably won't record it, but I'll definitely share some results on the channel and on my blog. So thanks again for watching. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.